Welcome to the Rich Report, a podcast with news and information on the world of big data. Today, my guest is from a company called Ninja Metrics. Actually, he's Dr. Dimitri Williams from USC. That's his day job. How you doing, Dimitri?
I'm good, Rich. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. You know, we're always interested in hearing about new companies in the big data space, especially around analytics and predictive analytics. Can you tell us, who is Ninja Metrics and who do you help?
So we're a startup based in Los Angeles. We're almost 20 people now, and we help people who are interested in marketing data and analytics. And our first customers and our first UI and dashboards and product have been for people in the video game industry. But as you'll see from the science and the tech, what we do is really broad, and we are starting to do pilots and proof of concept work in a number of other sectors, including music and entertainment, and newspapers, and a few other things besides.
Well, Dimitri, I mean, you got started. You were telling me earlier that this got started in the academic space. Were you studying, big data analytics, or were you studying video games, or how did you make the leap?
The answer is yes. So we were doing both, and this was really kind of big data before we even knew that was the term.
Yeah.
We were working on supercomputing arrays, a lot of stuff coming out of National Center for Supercomputing at the University of Illinois, where I was faculty at the time. And I was doing research on games and gamers. I was always really interested in gamer psychology and consumer psychology more generally. And I had been bugging and asking the game companies for big batches of data to do good research on. I'd been doing surveys and experiments and that kind of thing. And I was like, God, wouldn't it be great if we just had all their logs? This is like 10 years ago. And at one point, one of them actually said yes. And they sent me a drive, 3 terabytes of compressed data. And I was like, awesome, until I realized, wow, I have no idea what to do with this.
Yeah.
Because I was a social scientist and I can't even put that on a laptop. I was like, hey, that's not going to fit in SPSS. What am I going to do? So I very quickly made friends with computer scientists. And the ensuing 9 years have been a combination of social and computer science, working out big data techniques and algorithms. And yeah, we used game data as our sort of seed data set to learn about how to do this and how to do predictive stuff. And that's made a really interesting research team, and a lot of papers coming out of it, a lot of knowledge, a lot of IP, and a combination of social network analysis, longitudinal design, algorithm development with a mix of psychology and a lot of why questions along the way.
Okay.
It's been a lot of stuff.
I'll bet. So are we talking something like server-based, like World of Warcraft or something like that? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, exactly like that. So we actually did some research on WoW, but most of our data came from a Sony online entertainment game called EverQuest 2. And so if you were to Google me and my team, you'd see dozens of papers on big data analysis of that game and its server logs. And we had the really unique ability to combine survey data with server data and match it on person. Mm-hmm. So we knew both what the people were like and how they thought about themselves and their feelings and their background, their demographics, as well as their actions. And this, again, is like 9 years ago, so it was really early. And to be able to do that was very hard. It's easier to do now, and you can automate some of these things. This is a real kind of just, out in the frontiers, screwing up, learning lessons, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I would guess, Dimitri, that the nature of this would give you potentially much better understanding of a customer base than almost any other company could possibly get. I mean, you're getting it from the server and they're interacting with you at the same time.
Oh yeah, this is one of those be careful what you ask for things, actually.
Yeah.
It's the richest possible data source you could possibly ask for, because think about a video game is very different than, say, an e-commerce website, because people are doing a lot more things and it's being captured at really intense resolution. So it's every action, every interaction, every transaction on a millisecond basis for millions of people for years on end. And so it's just an overwhelming amount of data and stuff to just make sense of. And you've got to deal with more fields. It's not like just, user so-and-so bought an item on such and such date. It's user so-and-so killed a dragon, went to an auction house, then bought an item, then logged out, then sent messages to their friend, then posted it on the website, then joined the special rewards program, and 400 other fields. And you have to build models out of that mess is a pretty crazy thing.
Yeah. So what about the broader applicability here? I mean, some people, I don't care about games, but it sounds like you're really measuring everything they're doing.
Well, so the application, there are scientific applications, and then there are productized things. So
Yeah.
on the science side, it is how can you use games as a laboratory? How can you look at them as a parallel to the real world and use them as like petri dishes? And
Mm-hmm.
do people behave the same online and off, and can use one as a test bed for the other? Tons of research on that, really interesting stuff. But the product side of it emerged about 4 or 5 years ago when our team realized that we could take the social networking side of the data we had, which is which players are interacting with other players, who are friends with which other players, and to see if we could throw that into the models. And so we invented an algorithm that actually detects influence among players and now among anybody. And
Mm-hmm.
so we're able to say when Rich does something, is Dimitri more or less likely to do it? Is
Yeah.
there a ripple effect from particular people? And so this let us do something that never been done in influence circles before, because sort of the state of the art right now is, do you tweet and do other people listen? And while that's nice, it's nowhere near as powerful as do you do something and do other people do it? Because that's so much more bottom line for business purposes. So
Sure.
our algorithm actually, and we call this thing social value, measures which people are influencers and how much activity, spending, and views and clicks and links and shows watched or songs listened to or euros spent or whatever a person generates among their friends just by being connected with them. That is very productizable, very interesting to business, and has tons of applications and is a much longer story.
Okay, so let's get into the product piece then. I mean, Ninja Metrics, do you just provide a platform for people that might want to go explore this, or is it much more specific than that?
So we have an engine which crunches this stuff in an automated fashion. And so
Okay.
we're doing a number of models, predictive analytics, and the social value stuff all the time. And so the way we collect data isn't any different than any other analytics company. There's nothing special about this.
Yeah.
We collect maybe a few more fields than others do because our algorithms, dig a little deeper, but that part, it's pretty straightforward. So we get the stuff, and then we're constantly saying, this user is X% likely to churn, or this person is X% likely to convert. And that's really handy to have that in a dashboard that updates every day. I mean, not
Mm-hmm.
all the analytics firms can do that, actually very few. And that's usually something you have to pay to have bespoke work done on to have models. And this is a fire and forget, self-service, API-driven system. So the company hooks up, shoots data off to us, and just gets dashboards, and they just work. And they just say, here's the confidence in the system. Here is the value of the player. Here's the likelihood of them to convert or churn or do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So that part's really handy. But the social value part is the really cool bit because it's saying every day this player caused this much spending or will cause this much spending, and it's predictive also. These things are both really, really accurate. So our users, our clients have dashboards which now say, here are the people who are super valuable. Here are the acquisition sources they came from. So when people think about marketing and attribution, they can really know the right ROI and the bang for their buck for which ads are delivering not just spenders, but influencers.
Yeah.
At the tail end of their life cycle for churn, you imagine, okay, I want to protect everybody from churning out, but okay, I want to protect my whales. And this person spends $200 a month, so they're super valuable. Well, what about the person who spends $20 a month, but whose presence in the network causes an additional $500 of spending? They
Mm-hmm.
never knew that person was important, and we spot them, and they're there. We find people with huge multiples on their own spending.
Ah.
So we call these people social whales. So there's retention around them. Imagine in the interface, you've got the percentage likelihood of this person to go,
Yeah.
and the amount of money that's at risk, which is not just them, but is their friends' impact also. So no one's ever had that before. That's
Oh,
really cool.
that's amazing. So like these social whales might just be look like a guppy if you just looked at their account, right, on
Oh,
how much
sure.
they buy, but they might have a school of fish that follows them that represents huge margin then.
That's exactly right. That's a
Okay.
great analogy for it.
Okay.
Um, and then there's a third value, which is, okay, you've got them in your system. You're not thinking about getting them or retain them.
Yeah.
How do you take advantage of them while they're there?
Mm.
And you can imagine that if you're thinking about this kind of ripple on a pond metaphor, or the lead guppy in the school of fish, if you make that person happier, if you make them spend more money, will you get a ripple effect? And what kinds of promotions in CRM will generate this positive cascade out from that person? And our system allows you to A/B test exactly that. You can see not just the lift of the person,
Yeah.
but the ripple and how much money or behavior is created on the ripple. And that's also never been able to be done before too. And it's all, again, automated SaaS, fire and forget stuff now. So it's been a lot of engineering time to build this out, and we've just launched this thing.
Okay. So you guys are almost a single purpose then. You're a whale finder.
We're a whale finder and a whale leverager, and we're trying to connect that with CRM and email providers and attribution tools, and make that whole ecosystem richer and smarter.
Hmm.
hmm
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so as far as your platform, what can you tell me about it, Dimitri? Is it some a Hadoop-based thing sitting in Amazon, or what do you guys use?
Well, we use a number of different resources. I mean, there are the usual, SQL, MongoDB, Hadoop, MapReduce kinds of things happening.
Sure.
It's sitting up in Amazon Web Services for our SaaS clients.
Yeah.
Although for a lot of people, for the really big companies that are out there that don't want to do stuff in SaaS for either privacy or data security or whatever reason or control, they want it behind their firewall. What we'll do is we'll come and deploy it in kind of an appliance style. So we call that enterprise work, and we've done that now a couple times. And we'll go in and we'll write ETL scripts from their database to the box they provision for us. And so it's essentially like a mini cloud local to them.
Yeah.
So to us, the system, the black box doesn't know where it's living, so it's fine.
Okay.
You know.
And Dimitri, the guys on the other end, the clients, are they typically data scientists, or is that more what they're coming to you for?
There's a really wide range, and
Yeah.
90% of the people I talk to are in the video game industry, and I have very different responses and clients there than I do in, say, e-commerce or music or streamed entertainment. Very different cultures for their data science and their BI departments. So in the game side, I typically talk with a BI or marketing person. In the big shops, like they've got a team of 1 to 8 or 10 people who do this stuff and do modeling, and they've been doing it one-off. And so it's usually like I talk to the marketing person who says, wow, this is awesome. They hand it off to their IT people, and the IT people say, whoa, what is this thing? And they have to assess it, think about it. Do I trust these guys? What's going on? Could we do this ourselves? All that usual stuff. So it's kind of a 1-2 step that we've got to go through. But usually it's the marketing people who drive it. But if they get the content creators and the developers and the community people interested, then there are huge tools for them too, because you start saying, well, what's the social value of a person who gets to level 10 or who buys this particular item? And you start thinking about causal relationships there. And so now it's not just a marketing, a BI tool. Now it's a tool for the developers. They want to know what's working and what's effective and what, hey, if you got to level 10 or a person who goes into this group or does this kind of social interaction, they're more or less likely to churn and their social value goes up or down. That's important feedback for what's working in their title or their service. So you wind up getting more and more, stakeholders across the organization, and it stops being just a marketing thing.
Yeah, I would think they could change how they develop their code or spend more time on the things that are making them money and making people happy versus this might be a cool feature at level 11, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. And there's
Yeah.
really no ROI feedback loop for content creators to know what works. I mean, think
Hmm.
about Netflix at the high end of really trying to parse out the bang for the buck of I created or I funded this piece of content and it gives me this return.
Yeah.
Well, try doing that in like a video game with 60 levels of stuff, and the guys work on what they think is cool and they read the forums to see what do people care about. But that's very different than knowing what actually causes a spending pattern or a different reaction, and that's something we do that hasn't been done before.
Terrific. Well, is this something you can demo? Can we see how it might work?
Sure. Yeah. Let me share screen here.
So what are we looking at here?
Well, so this is a social network, and when you think about social networks and you think Facebook and LinkedIn and Pinterest and whatnot, it's made up of stuff like this, where all the circles are people and
Hmm.
all the lines between them are relationships. So the scientists call these nodes and edges, but we call them people and relationships. And the most important thing we do at the start of our process is to draw this graph out. And now, companies don't use this graph. Like the thing I'm going to show you, nobody would actually on a daily basis look up and say, hey, that's Fred over there and Sally over there. But when you can draw this graph, then you can do the math of it and you can start throwing it into your algorithms, and it gets really, really powerful. And so let's say that this is you here, the green dot, user ID 7541. And let's say this is me up here, the blue dot, user 2541.
Mm-hmm.
And so we ask, does Rich influence Dimitri to do anything? And the way that we would look at that is we would look at what actions each of us takes in what order,
Okay.
and follow it over time. So let's imagine that you and I become connected here on March 4th. And tomorrow, you buy a ticket to go see the Lego movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 days later, I go buy a ticket to see the Lego movie. We say, well, did anybody influence anybody else? Well, I didn't influence you because I went second, right? There's no
Right.
way that. And did you influence me? Well, maybe. But just happening once, that's not too impressive. But next month, maybe you buy a movie ticket and I buy the same ticket a few days later. All right, that's a little more interesting. And then the third month, you don't buy a movie ticket and I don't buy a movie ticket. That in itself is also interesting.
Hmm.
So if you add that kind of, treatment control kind of thinking and a machine learning looking at this over time with millions and millions of actions and did they do it, did the person follow, you start to build up a sense of confidence in it. You start saying, wow, some of this is random, some of this is going in both directions, but some of it is actually a person is influential and they're an epicenter, and when they do stuff, it cascades out. And those are the social whales, and that's who we find, and that's who we do the predictive algorithms on. And it's been very accurate. We can do this at about 90% accuracy out into a month. So if I say that you're going to spend X and cause X ripple, the correlation between my guess and what actually happens is about 0.9 on average. So it's very accurate.
Yeah.
And that lets us really think about life in a whole new way, because normally you just figure, well, Rich spends $100, he's worth $100. Well, some of your spending might have been caused by someone else, and you may be causing spending that we can't see. So it's really trying to line up what everybody is really responsible for and to figure out what portion of the spending is driven by the product or service and what portion of the spending or behavior is driven by the social interactions. And we actually can see that on both the individual level and in the aggregate, and we can talk about some big picture findings and patterns, as well as understand it on a individual user by user basis, to then think about, okay, what are we going to do to influence this system? So here I've got a table version of it, and I'm looking at a particular user, and I've got these three basic components of the person: social value, asocial lifetime value, and influenceability. The middle one, and it's future spending. So we're doing this as a predictive analytics piece. And so we say this person's going to spend $50 before they churn out. Okay. But that's asocial, as in this is the amount of their spending which is driven by the product or service. It's nothing to do with relationships. All that stuff's totally stripped out. Their influenceability is how much more spending they're going to do because their friends influencing them.
Yeah.
So this person on the books, they're going to spend $100, and 50 of it is because of the product, and 50 of it is because of their friends. And then the new thing over here, social value, is this is the extra amount of spending their friends are going to do because of user 101. And so the difference between these green and orange columns out here are the personal spend is how much they're going to do, and we're attributing it to them and their friends. And then total value is when you add up their ripple effect. And so if user 101 gets hit by a bus tomorrow, $150 gets wiped off the table. And not all of that would have been from them, some of it would have been of their friends. And so when we go back over here to these A, B, and C columns, what we see in practice are all kinds of interesting patterns where some people are really isolated and they're just big spenders and they have like nothing in their social columns. Other times we get people who have small LTVs and have huge influenceability numbers or huge social value numbers. And so you think about their categories of people, plain isolated whales, big spenders, big social whales, and then followers, people with high influenceability. And if you're a marketer, you would start thinking about how, okay, these are different kinds of people. I should be interacting with them differently. I should be much more custom. And I should start thinking about their relationships with each other as much as their relationships to me. And, this is the tool set to do all of that.
Well, as you're describing this, Dimitri, I'm thinking of extrapolating it up to bigger number things like maybe online gambling or day trading or something, and adding a bunch of zeros to this kind of thing. Sure.
Well, we've actually done some experimentation in both of those areas.
Yeah.
Online gambling is less social than, say, online gaming, and people don't like to post about it as much.
Sure.
Social. But online trading, we've actually done tests of this, and we can measure influencers in stock trades. To be honest, we're not entirely sure what to do with this information. If there's some enterprising, arbitrage hedge guy out there who hears this and wants to give me a call, because I can say, if Rich buys X stock, this is the ripple effect that he'll cause,
Sure.
and on these particular people.
I mean, yeah, like Warren Buffett, whatever he does affects what other people do, right?
Right,
It's like
right.
because he knows how
Yeah,
to make money. So
yeah.
interesting.
And and much like the difference between influence systems that help companies find celebrity spokespeople, like who has the biggest influence score,
Hmm.
we're not usually thinking that much about, finding the Warren Buffett so much as, your friend Bob down the street
Yeah,
or your brother or son, or I mean, this is really like local celebrities. It's
yeah,
small scale stuff, and they add up to be huge in the aggregate.
sure.
So if we go up here to the summary stat, the total amount of asocial LTV, okay, that's just a shorthand way of saying how much is the product or service generating,
Yeah.
totally independent of community. Whereas the social value number, if you add up all the social values, all those influence, that's essentially how much the community is generating.
Oh,
So, so it's pretty cool to see the size of these two things and to see them relative to each other.
yeah.
And then the numbers that I have here, these of course are just demo data. I'm not going to show customer data. Are about a 1-to-3 ratio. And I
Hmm.
picked that because that's about the average that we're seeing. In
Mm.
other words, about 25% of spending is coming purely from community, and
Mm.
about 75% of spending is coming purely from the product or service. That is our baseline average. In
Okay.
some industries, some games, some e-commerce websites, the teeter-totter might shift higher or lower on one side.
Yeah.
But I mean, super interesting as a way of looking at human nature, but
Yeah.
also super valuable as a benchmark for, like, how am I month on month, how are these percentages changing? And to really know, like, how important is my community? And as I mentioned earlier, for like community managers, they never had any proof that what they did mattered. It
Yeah.
was all just like, goodwill, and we should do right by our customers. This is
Yes.
very bottom line. This is like, well, here's how much your community actually generates.
Yeah.
And if it's small or big, you should start thinking about ways of improving it. And you also will notice that when we look at this kind of meta level across multiple services, the ones who have social features built in, the
Yeah.
ones that have better social support, they have a bigger chunk of spending comes out of social value. They're making more money off of it, and you can see it right here.
Yeah. And Dimitri, what you guys do, does it affect that ratio? I'm just curious.
Well, not directly. I mean, this is a monitoring tool,
Yeah.
so it lets them affect it and then see what happens.
Yeah.
So if I let them say run a CRM promotion, and they want to do a promotion where they want to send a push notification message or an email marketing message, and they want to do it to everybody with a particular social value or everybody with a particular churn probability.
Yeah.
They make the cut points. So then they've got a little cohort or a bin, and then after the fact they can go and segment and say, okay, I want to look at the people in a particular promotion, and I want to make them A/B groups.
Hmm.
And so I want to take a look at, I've got here is this example, the overall average of everybody's numbers, and then an A, B, and a C testing group. Could have been control groups, could have been treatment groups, could be whatever, different marketing things they want to try. As they go down here, the total value number, and they can see, all right, here's the baseline,
Yeah.
$20. And then the people who got these 3 CRMs, it went up or it went down, or it backfired or whatever,
Uh-huh.
and they can see the actual ROI on the effort.
Wow.
Well, that's pretty cool, but even cooler is that we can go over here to the left, and you could see where that change is coming from. Is it coming from changes in LTV, or is it coming from changes in social?
Yeah.
So, like this hypothetical one here for group B, it may be that actually it's that made people follow others more.
Yeah.
And create a lift in spending and create a lift in social value, whatever. These are all hypothetical. But it lets you know not just what worked and how much, but also gives you some insight into why and how it worked. And again, never been able to see that part of the process before. And so, the value that we deliver is to give smart people the tools to learn what works for them. And then at a kind of meta level, we get to see what works for everybody and provide best practices and advice.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is almost like a real-time marketing environment, right? With results and all that.
Well, so yeah, I mean, it's essentially an experimental monitoring tool would be the nerdy way of putting it, but it's
Sure.
sort of live CRM. You're looking at the ripple effect, and
Yeah.
you have to be smart about using it. You've got to wait for the ripple to stop. These are real humans interacting with each other,
Right.
and give a promotion away in some e-commerce system. You give people free shipping. You give them a discount.
Mm-hmm.
Most companies have some sense of how long that takes. They
Yeah.
might not know how much they made, and our system makes it very apparent. But okay, that takes, say, maybe 10 days on average for a person to use it. Well, how long does the ripple effect on their friends take after that? We
Yeah.
don't know. That you have to be patient and allow it. And if you let it go for weeks or months and then it dies out, okay, stop. It's not doing it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll give you the sense. And there's just a lot of learning to be done here about what works and what promotions are smart. And we've got a lot of ideas about what people should try, but what's effective in selling movie tickets versus video game microtransaction goods versus shoes on an e-commerce website. This is all greenfield area to go figure out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Dimitri, let me ask you about your target market here. Because I always get this question. I'm a small company. Who do you think I should engage with? Because I got all this data, and we're not using it in a good way, right? Are you going after the Fortune 1000s, or would you be, amenable to a small company that had that 3 terabyte drive full of goodness?
Well, the beauty of SaaS is that I get to say yes to everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Amazon's Amazon gives you all the capacity you could possibly ever want. I'm not a paid spokesperson for them,
Yeah.
but scaling is not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
So and our cost doesn't change if we're servicing a company with 10,000 paying users versus 10 million or 100 million.
Mm-hmm.
So we simply scale and charge based on the number of people in the system. So for people with small enterprises, it winds up being very affordable. And
Yeah.
for people with large successful enterprises, it winds up scaling to be, fair and proportionate.
Yeah.
And really the integration time is the same for both.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, take our SDK, go put the calls in, and it's automated, off and running. So it's, it's not as easy to get going as, TurboTax or Skype or even Flurry, which is like, an hour to stick into the operating system level. You've actually got to go put the calls in, and like, if someone logs in your website, you've got to, put our script in at the right spot that says, okay, so and so logged in, and send it up to the URL. It's not hard,
Yeah.
but that it's not a 2-hour process either. It's usually like 3 or 4 days of dedicated time.
Sure. Sure.
So if you're a small business or big business, you spend those 3 or 4 days, and you take the SDK and you don't even have to talk to us if you don't want to. Although we're perfectly friendly and happy to talk to you.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that engagement, because does this take like a contract to help for integration, or people can just pick it up?
Well, so for our game clients, we have maybe a dozen right now. This is really brand new, and some of them are fully onboarded, some of them are halfway.
Yeah.
And we're finding that some of them don't need to talk to us at all.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them want their hand held a little bit more, and of course we're new to it and getting better at the support and the onboarding too. And we'll be better 6 months from now than we were last month. That's inevitable.
Yeah.
We hope that eventually no one ever needs to talk to us. But so for right now, we give a kickoff call and we handhold everybody who wants it.
Yeah.
Down the line, hopefully we have enough videos and on-site stuff that it's not necessary, and it's more of an opt-in, like call us if you need us, because we'll be here to help. But most sides don't want to, because it's add friction and whatnot.
Yeah.
For our big engagements, we almost always bundle in some level of consulting service. I mean, if somebody is having us come behind their firewall and spend some money on NRE, they're going to want me to come in, or somebody else from my team to come in and hold a couple seminars, do some training, explain some of the stuff that I've done on this podcast, and walk through their service team and talk about the implications. Because it's so new, there's an education and evangelization component that has to go on here.
Sure.
Because most, I tell people what we do, and they go, "Yeah, you can't do that. That's impossible." I walk through it.
Yeah.
It's not magic. It's just science. But and then once I explain to people, they go, "Oh, that's really cool. I want that." But that process isn't like 10 seconds. That process is usually like 5 minutes, and then they're hooked and everybody's into it.
Yeah. Is it the predictive? When you say the word predictive, is that when they start waving their hands like that's not real? That's not real.
No. Well, there are two conversations to be had. One is the whole sort of Minority Report predictive analytics thing.
Yeah.
And that's a separate animal, and I should put my confidence score up at the top here. So we're very science driven, and we put our scores at the top because it's never 100%. If it's 100%, somebody's lying to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
The best models, they don't get up there. You get 0.8, 0.9, you should be pretty happy.
I would think. Yeah.
Yeah. These are F scores for the tech nerds in the audience. They're very good.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that predictive conversation, and that's a sexy term, but I expect predictive to get commodified over the next 3-4 years as other people figure out how to automate this. It's hard,
Yeah.
and we have a lot of smart people, but there are a lot of other smart people out there too. So it's nice, it's automated, ours works, please come use it, you know. But the thing that most people are really intrigued by is the social.
Yeah.
Really touches on a piece of human nature that everybody can relate to, because everybody is influencing and influenced, and everybody has their own anecdotes of, oh yeah, my friend bought the new barbecue and I wanted it, or that girl bought the Lululemon sweatpants and then I bought them 2 weeks later,
Mm-hmm.
or my friend got DirecTV and then I did. I mean, everybody intuits this stuff. It's, you know, we're social monkeys,
Right.
and I have made it laid bare for everybody for something they always intuited. And so people find it very powerful from their own experience.
Yeah, and you've tied that to real dollars and cents
Yep.
to help them make decisions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let the data tell the story is how any analytics service should be. And and this particular story is much more fun than most.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how let's talk about money. I mean, how do you guys charge? I mean, what's your business model?
So we'll charge right now in the games industry. We're charging, you know, in the low hundreds of dollars or mid hundreds of dollars for people to have it for a small game.
Mm-hmm.
We may wind up having to raise our rates later on. We're kind of in experimental mode right now. So here I'm being quoted, but you can't quote me. And then we'll charge some extra amount of money per million active users.
Okay.
And that'll vary between games and e-commerce as well. In e-commerce, where the pools of data and the number of end users are different, the costs and the scaling will be different as well.
Yeah.
Because you tend to have, you know, a website with a lot less traffic than, say, Angry Birds or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the services that they need are actually simpler than the ones the game industry needs, because I have a ton of buttons over here on the left that go on for hours.
Yeah.
That, you know, I've got there are 250 dashboards sitting over there for the game industry, whereas an e-commerce provider really only needs this one, and some predictive stuff and a couple KPIs at the top. So it's a much simpler service, easier to integrate, faster to get going.
Yeah. Yeah. So I got to ask you about the name of the company before we go here. Where'd that come from?
I'm always surprised by this. Do people not understand that ninjas are cool? I mean, where'd it come from? Ninjas are cool, you know.
Well, I just assumed it was a Japanese company that did
No,
a game developing, right?
No, my parents were particularly irresponsible and let me have throwing shuriken and katanas when I was a kid. And I just think, I have kids now, and I think, oh my God, I can't believe they let me do this stuff.
Right.
And I just thought ninjas were the coolest thing ever. And I just thought, you know, if I ever do anything serious in life, I'm going to give it this goofy name. So we have this ridiculously high-end science company, and I've given it this name from my childhood. I just like ninjas. There's no other good reason.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, Dimitri, this has been fascinating, and I want to thank you for coming on the show today.
It's my pleasure, Rich. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, you bet. Okay, folks, that's it for the Rich Report. Stay tuned for more news and information on the world of big data.